In the previous movie, Creating an Image Cube, we set up the initial CSS rules necessary for transforming, there's that word again, two-dimensional pictures into a three-dimensional cube. In this movie, we're going to add the necessary JavaScript and CSS3 rules to make it interactive. First, let's bring in our JavaScript helpers. In all, there are 3 files we're going to link to. Let's start with Modernizer, the excellent library that makes it easy to detect CSS browser support on a function-by-function basis. So right after the second link tag that links our CSS transitions file, we'll add in a script tag, set the type to text JavaScript, and source we'll set to the underscore scripts folder, and within that, Modernizer 2.5.3.min.js. Let's close out the script tag, and we'll go to our next line. Next, I'm going to link to a series of utilities put together by David DeSandro, whose tutorial on 3D cubes was the basis for this implementation. Again, script, type, text, JavaScript, and the source will go again to my underscore scripts folder, and this time it's utils.js. One more to go, and the final one is the rotate.js file, also scripted by David DeSandro, that handles the actual CSS class removal and addition when a thumbnail is clicked. So we start with script, type, and again it's text JavaScript. And we'll point to the same path, which is our // scripts / rotate-box.js. That's all the JavaScript. I'm going to save the page. Let's turn to the remaining CSS rules. All that's left to do is to add the rules that govern the show classes, like show front, show top, and so forth. These classes are added to the parent container. In our case, that's the div with the ID of cube, whenever the corresponding thumbnail is clicked. Each class will contain the transform properties to move the cube side to the front. Let's begin with the front face. So we'll enter in #cube dot show hyphen front. Make sure there's no space between cube and the dot show front. As when we set up the front face for the cube, there's no rotation involved, just a translation or movement along the z-axis. Whereas previously the value for the translate z property was positive 136 pixels, because we're moving it back into position, we'll use a negative 136 pixels. So let's start with our WebKit transform and the function translate z of a negative 136 pixels. Okay, we can copy that line, paste it in 3 times, and change the vendor prefixes as needed. Next, let's turn to the back. Here, and with the rest of the cube sides, we'll perform a rotation as well as a translation. And we'll keep the same values, but make them the inverse of what they were when we set up the cube. So if the values are positive, we'll make them negative. And if they're negative, positive. And one more thing. If we rotated the cube first and then translate it, we need to do the inverse of that. So we'll need to translate it first so that it's in the proper position to rotate. All right, let's get started with #cube dot show hyphen back. And our first transform property, hyphen WebKit transform. Now let's enter in our translate z property with a value of negative 136 pixels. And our other function, rotate x. And we're rotating this 180 degrees. Put a semicolon, and this is ready to be copied and pasted. And then slightly modified. Okay, let's move on. Let's follow the same pattern for the right and left side of the cube. I'll put in my selector for Show Right, starting with WebKit Transform, and the function Translate Z, again set to negative 136 pixels, and Rotate Y, negative 90 degrees. We'll select Copy and Paste, as we've done once or twice before. And now I'm going to copy Show Right, and let's paste it in and change it to Show Left. The Translate Z value we can keep at negative 136 pixels, but let's change our Rotate Y from a negative 90 to a positive 90. Finally, let's do the same thing, reversing the signs as it were, for the top and bottom of our photo cube. To make things a little faster and maybe a tad less monotonous, let's copy the Show Right and Show Left CSS rules, and then we'll paste them down below and change their names to Show Top and Show Bottom. The other thing we'll need to change in each of these rules is Rotate Y to Rotate X. Let's save the page, and let's see if we're ready to rock or not. I'll refresh the page in my browser, and let's click through the thumbnails. Sweet. We got a real 3D cube spinning around interactively. Obviously, this technique is somewhat limited. You can only show 6 thumbnails and images at a time, but you have to admit it's a cool addition to your designer's toolbox.